Welcome back to another episode of Hustle Like You Broke. Matthew Walt here, along with the usual suspects. My good friend Christine Dallas down in Miami, Florida. How are you today, Dallas?
So well, I'm just watching those mangoes. I cannot wait. You have no idea. It's the best part of the year right now. Very exciting stuff.
Good to hear. And from Los Angeles, California, Mr. Kyle Hamilton. How are you, my friend?
Top of the evening, sitting here on this nice overcast Thursday, having a small bowl of crunch berries, of course, and a day of relaxation.
Overcast in Los Angeles, always a little bit concerning. Mr. Chris Lee, are you seeing the same thing from where you are?
Yes, I have severe overcast this morning. It's caused me to
Well,
actually have a breakfast cocktail.
a breakfast cocktail. Well, it's always a good day when you have time for a breakfast cocktail. How is that helping with your teaching your daughter today?
Well, I'm not really sure. We'll see how the day pans out.
Drinking on the job, there it is. Well, today we're actually fortunate to be introducing our first venue management industry professional. I'm very happy for that because we talk about, and the news, organizations always talk about the layoffs among the promoters and Ticketmaster and the agencies between layoffs and furloughs and what have you. Um, and then in our everyday lives outside of the concert industry, we all know the impact, of restaurants and bars being closed. And of course, no one would know kind of the confluence of those two better than someone who works in venue management. And the venue management and the staff in the clubs in particular is a huge, huge number of industry professionals that are not seen, heard from, or truly appreciated. The security, the labor, the bouncers, the front of house, the back of house, the bartenders, and again, that's tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of people that are, I would imagine, currently unemployed. But rather than hearing it from me, today we've got a longtime associate of our own, Christine Dallas, joining us. They worked together years ago with AC Entertainment, and Dallas is going to be running the point on this this interview as a result. So please welcome Mr. Tom Bugg to the table. Tom, how are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Well, we are glad to have you. We really appreciate you. And if you wouldn't mind first just telling us a little bit about yourself, your background, and we'll take the conversation wherever you want to go.
Okay, well, I'm the general manager of the Tennessee and Bijou theaters in Knoxville, Tennessee. Um, the is actually we are I work for AC Entertainment, which is now part of Live Nation. But we manage and book these two historic theaters in downtown Knoxville. The Tennessee is a movie palace that's, I think, 92 years old in about 3 or 4 months. And the Bijou is 111 years old. So they're both historic theaters. Tennessee's about 1,600 seats. The Bijou's about 750. Um, so Knoxville, Tennessee is very lucky to have still these two historic theaters still standing. Uh, and I'm a longtime Knoxville boy. I was born and raised here, and got in the business as a bartender for the most part. Originally, 40 years ago, which makes me feel really old, but I worked for Bandit Lights, uh, which is also based here in Knoxville for a little bit. Uh, and I start thinking and listening to a couple of your podcasts and the hustle like you broke. I think that's how I got in the business is uh, being not being smart enough to say no, that's too much. Just keep going. So, but it's And then I was with communicating with Christine about this, and I was like, oh, this actually has been a career. I'd never thought about it as a career before, but yeah, you're you've been doing this, 30 years. It's a career. So there you have it.
I love that because I've watched it happen, I guess, and coming from that same school, um, and having worked side by side with you, I've seen it in the trenches. And I think this is a great time for, with the problems that we're facing right now in the world, we can, those of us that have that ability to, sidestep and keep digging deep, are going to hopefully keep reinventing and continue. But I think that the theater element is such a critical part of our, like Matt was saying earlier, this is the place of where people come to shows, and how do we deal with that? But you particularly, having started at the bottom, are very familiar with what people feel like and the concerns that your workers have and the concerns that you have when you try to staff things, because you can't put everybody on full payroll, and you do have to deal with the part-time workers who are the ushers and the ticket takers and the bartenders and such. Where do you see that going?
I think it's going to continue. I mean, when we get to the other side, I think for the most part it will continue as it was. I can say that you know they're kind of separated. Like ushers, for the most part, are um, in elderly, retired, and they do it for the social aspect of it. It gives them structure. Uh, Bartenders are, some of them have real, full time jobs, and they're gigging. Some of them are just absolute. That's what they do, is they bartend. 3, 4, 5 nights a week, or they either have other bartending jobs. And but in our world, I think the theater bartenders make really good money, and it's and they're off work at a decent hour. They're not having to work till 3 o'clock in the morning. They're off by 11 for the most part. So uh, maybe who I feel the most for right now are the local hands, the stage hands. I mean, IATSE and not, which I work with both. Uh, you know, I really feel for those guys probably the most at this point in time, because they have nothing to fall back on.
Is there anything in the community? Is anyone reaching out to them, since Knoxville's a relatively small community and all the venues use both, like you mentioned, union stagehands as well as non-union hands?
The ones that have reached out to me, I've sent to and I don't know if it's going to happen. I've not heard, but the Live Nation, and I can't remember the name of the program now. I know that you guys know what it is. I've sent them that, but at this point, uh, and I don't talk to many of them that often. Some have reached out to me, but mostly I just hear anecdotal stories, and some are doing okay. Actually, one of some of them helped one of my assistant managers move a couple weeks ago, and they seem to be all doing fine. Uh, they're, I was not hearing any, or once again, anecdotal, any stories about, destitution or anything like that. But I think they're probably getting unemployment because I think the gig workers can.
Well, that's encouraging, because we've heard other stories around the country where they're talking about, stagehands sleeping in cars and such. So it's not, it's never happened, never a good moment to hear. When you talk about, like you were mentioning, because some of your workforce is older, what about when we flip it over and talk about the audience that comes? Obviously, they're established historical venues. Some would believe, because they're 1,500 seat venues. Are you getting a lot of diverse acts still? Or I know you guys do Broadway as well as you have an orchestra contract. So the Knoxville Symphony Orchestra, I believe, plays in the venue. having all those differences, what do you see moving along? Do you think you'll continue to have this diversity?
I think so. As the local arts organizations, I, I have not, once again, I've not heard any kind of things like we're in dire straits. I think they're all going after the PPP money. Um, and so, but, once again, I think at this point, we're kind of early in this and we'll see how it goes. But I think that the art scene in Knoxville is fairly vibrant and that we, I think it'll start coming back slowly. Uh, and uh, a lot of our renters, actually, I've had a couple of texts today if people want to talk to me and they're going to want to ask my opinion about when we're getting back. And everybody has an opinion, but nobody knows.
This is so true. Absolutely. But I did think one of your interesting points was the things that the new of coronavirus things it brings to you, like having to, what were you mentioning? Is having to write trespassing citations and working with the police.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, this is one of we've had, I've both got outdoor foyers at both theaters and that we've seemed to have, some homeless folks that are staying to sleep in there these days. Um, and a couple of them has used it uh, as a toilet as well. And so the I have to for the police to arrest these people, I have to do a trespass notice. So to give them once they've warned them once to not do it again, then they have to have a trespass notice to either cite them or arrest them. And I guess a couple of them have been, obnoxious with the officers. So yeah, that's what I spent this morning doing.
So, in order to have the police come and talk to and arrest someone, you have to give them a written notice prior to that. Is that only a law in Knoxville?
I don't know where it's a line. I mean, it's what basically, and I have a great relationship with the Knoxville Police Department, and a lot of the officers work for me. Um, they can tell them to move on, and they do. But I think the issue is that now there are a couple of them, a couple of these guys that they're telling to move on have gotten very mouthy with them. They're not allowed to arrest them unless we put them on trespass notice. That makes sense.
Not really.
Hmm, that's no,
Hmm.
that's completely asinine. Because I know if I mean, like out here in California, if you're loitering and you call the police and they come and you don't leave, you're just arrested and they handle it later. It's not like you have to give them a warning, please leave, or else you're gonna get arrested. Like that's kind of backwards.
And I'm just doing what the officers asked me to do. So I, I haven't looked into it. I'm just writing a letter, sending it to the downtown lieutenant, and he'll take care of it from there.
That's
Yeah,
crazy. So tell us about the theaters over the years, because you've watched both these theaters go through massive renovations in recent history. Do you feel, I mean, because I've seen you do everything from splice film to make a film work to, is it now like, can you now do digital movies there, or as well as how are the facilities more electronic perhaps than they once were?
well, at the Tennessee is where we do a few films at the Bijou, but not that many. The Tennessee is the old movie palace. We do have a digital projector, DCP projector, so instead of sending the cans, which I know that you've carried many of those cans up and down stairs before.
Great lifting.
Yeah, it's great exercise. We we still have the 35 millimeter projectors upstairs, which are older than I am, so that's still cool. And occasionally we will do something on 35 millimeter, but we do have the DCPs, uh, and you know Uh, our technical director, Christine, who I know you know well, Tim Burns, whose father was a projectionist for years and years at the Tennessee. Tim was adamant against going to, he says, the purists won't like it, but once you got the digital prints, it's so much better. Sound is so much better. The picture is so much better. So he's totally changed his tune, which knowing Tim that he never
Yeah, I
changes
could
his
definitely
tune.
second
So
that opinion. Tell me something. What about like at front of house position? Because I know that's kind of sort of used to be in an awkward spot right there, kind of under the balcony with new improvements and such. Do you get a lot of positive feedback from touring teams, crews with both sound and lighting? How they love coming to the Tennessee Theater as a historical building, or do they find challenges working in an old proscenium theater?
um, mostly they've just said this, what a beautiful theater. It's amazing to me, the artists and the crew over the years that are like, what a beautiful theater. You know, this is one of the prettiest theaters I've ever been in. This is the Tennessee. The Bijou, they're like, wow, what the acoustics in this place are amazing. Why are the acoustics good? So good. I don't know. I'm not a techie. I don't know that. I'm pretty sure it's because it was built in 1909, uh, pre-public address system. Is they knew what they were doing back then.
And none of that configuration
Um,
was changed when they did the remodeling.
no, none of
That's
it.
fantastic because I've seen artists step away from the mics there once they've picked up. You know, start an artist who's never been in there before goes in, gets on the stage, and then, like you say, they're blown away by the acoustics of the Bijou, and it's not uncommon for them to go naked out there, isn't it?
Yeah, and actually, one of my fondest memories at the Bijou is Tony Bennett coming out in front of the microphone or a sold out show and just say what marvelous acoustics this place does, and did a couple songs, you know, with no amplification whatsoever. And it's still, you know, it's still the hair on the back of my neck raises up when I think about that night. So
That's awesome. There's so many nights, I know. What's the most progressive act you've had out there of recent memory at the Tennessee, for example?
progressive act. That's, you know, the Tennessee, we don't do I would that much progressive music. Um, and I would think that you guys consider don't won't wouldn't consider country as progressive, but you know the Sturgill Simpsons and the Jason Isbells of the world, uh, more of the Americana range, not mainstream country. But you know it's been a watching them over the years actually go from the Bijou, the progressions from the Bijou to the Tennessee to now the arenas and stuff like that. That's one of those cool things to watch too. Although, and I know you guys are do a lot of arena shows. I'm spoiled rotten. I've seen them in a 700 seat theater, and you know, Chris Stapleton's another one that you know you watch him play the 700 seat theater, and then you're the next time he's in town, he's you know playing you know with 20,000 people. I say to myself, it'll never be as good as it was when I saw him in my theater. So, and I'm spoiled and, and jaded as well, probably.
Well, Tom, let me jump in real quick. I just want to say I definitely think there's a lot of great and very progressive country music out there, and I think that Sturgill Simpson, did I say that right? Yeah, Jason Isbell, Chris Stapleton. I got confused between Simpson and Stapleton there for a second. My apologies. Obviously, I'm not that well versed. But what I know of these guys, they are extremely progressive. They are, they're really doing like there's a lot of talk that modern country is the new rock and roll, and I definitely think there's a lot of truth in that. So please don't discount what you're seeing as something that we or our audience wouldn't necessarily love. We definitely I want to hear more about that. I would love to hear more about you know, whatever venue, you're talking about, whichever one we're referring to, how the music has evolved over time, and what you're seeing in terms of the changes in the music that's being presented, whatever that genre may be.
Yeah, and the Tennessee is a little bit different. Uh, we do a lot of heritage acts. Um, Plus we do Broadway, plus the symphony, plus the opera. Um, and the Bijou kind of does, it has two audiences, the up and comers, uh, and also the niche artists that, that are going to do 500 to 700 people, every time they come to town, which is not every year, but every 2 or 3 years. Um, so, um, some of the ones that have played the Bijou in the last year or so, Beach House, the Marcus King Band, Billy Strings, Black Violin, uh, Valerie June, all I think are up and coming artists that are, you know, going to go somewhere. Um, and so to me, once again, I keep telling you I'm old because I am, but a lot of these artists I've never heard of until they come in, and it's like, wow, this is really cool. And then there's some of it that you know, uh, I'm like, I don't probably get it, but they're bringing people out, so I'm happy.
Well, I guess bringing people out is the name of the game. Selling tickets, putting asses in seats, and obviously that's an area that's somewhat deficient right now, to put it mildly. Um, but not dwelling on the now, I appreciate hearing about some of your history and some of the things that have come before. I'd love to hear your thoughts on where we're headed from here. If you could tell us, not so much your thoughts on how we come out of this, when we come out of this, or anything like that. I think it's too soon to speculate on that, and people try, but we just don't know. But we have talked a lot about ways that we want to make this industry a better place, a safer place, and love to hear your thoughts. At the club level, at from a venue perspective, venue management perspective, some things that maybe the agents and managers and high level promoter conversations at the Polestar conferences, and maybe things they haven't touched on before that we should be considering, as we come out of this, in this time where we have to refocus our attention on the needs of the working class heroes, as we call them.
Well, I definitely think the cleanliness thing, the disinfecting the buildings after each shows. Before we got shut down, we had just started instituting that as well. I think one of the things you're going to have to be proactive about telling your audience that you're safe, that this is a safe place to come. Um, I think when we start back, I think that your ushers and your security and everybody's probably going to be in masks. I don't know this, but I think there's a decent chance when we do come out of it early on that the audience is going to be in masks, and that's going to be mandatory. Um, I think that probably, taking temperatures before people come in the door is going to be one of those things, and that I think what you want is your audience to feel safe. I mean, it happened several years ago with, on the theater level when all of a sudden, it was kind of wide open to know you're getting, patted down, wanded, walk through metal detectors, and there was uh, most of the feedback you got was thank you. There was a little bit, and I would say in the 2 or 3% range, is you're infringing upon my rights. But, you know, and now in almost every contract that I see now is that you, people will be you going through mags or being wanded before they come in the door, and that's the contract. Um, so I think that's the key is that people are going to want to feel safe. You're going to want to make your audience feel safe, that this is not going to threaten us. And, and I don't, it was 4 or 5 years ago that we went to, you know, wanding and mags in every venue, um, to the, clear bag policies, which we have not instituted yet, but every bag gets searched. Um, so that's once again, I think it's just you've got to make your audience feel safe. If they're not feel safe,
I
they're not
agree with
coming
you,
in.
and I think my biggest question too, when it comes to that, is the cost factor, of course, because I think that's going to be the next devil in the detail. Who's going to absorb that additional cost? Because, of course, from the venue perspective, you're going to need more staff. Whether it's cleaning the bathrooms more often, as well as all the other obvious things. Um, how do you feel about that? And how do you think we approach that part of the story? Does that get embedded in the ticket? Is that something you think the promoters are going to take on? Are we looking at contracts now? And are we looking at that part of the contract?
Um, I think that on the other side, that it's going to be a shared cost. Everybody's going to have to bear that cost. I don't think that, and I think, this could be the optimist in me, is that, you know, the artists are going to want to feel as safe as the audience wants to feel. I mean, heard like your first or second podcast, you were talking about the artists you work for are
Thanks for listening.
germaphobes, and they don't. You're going to have to feel. Yeah, you're going to have to. Everybody's going to have to feel safe, and it's everybody. The bartenders are going to have to feel safe. That's the whole trick. Is it's a safety thing for everyone. It's not just the audience. It's the staff. So, so I think it would, yeah, there'll be some uh, incremental costs, but I think it'll be shared, and I think everybody will be uh, happy to pitch in, especially after what we've been last 8 weeks. Has it been 8 weeks? 6 weeks?
Me either.
I can't
It's
remember.
all one big blur.
Yeah. So, right. Exactly.
I think that's
So.
a valid point. I mean,
Uh,
as I'm concerned, like what are the dressing rooms? I mean, the dressing rooms are already filthy in most venues. I know not in yours, of course, but it's going to be an interesting part of the whole equation. And yeah, I think you're right. I think we're all going to have to share the cost of that, and hopefully everybody will be, um, positive about it. But it'll be definitely interesting to see how it translates.
Let me jump in right quick. Why do you feel that if, when you think about it, venues are open to the public and you have thousands of hundreds of thousands of people coming through your facility yearly, so why is it that now all of a sudden, because a pandemic shows up, that disinfecting is important? Shouldn't it have been important prior to?
I think in my venues are very clean, but I also think it's a perception. I think it's a public perception, uh, and the disinfecting, you know, spraying chemicals all over the place. You know, uh, Not my idea for until 6 weeks ago or 7 weeks ago. It was like, oh, great, another chemical that we're spraying around, and um, but obviously the world's changed.
Yeah, they're going to use the word disinfecting, but at the end of the day, they're just going to use, commercial grade disinfectant to spray everything down. I believe it's just going to be the standard stuff, just actually being implemented now instead of, oh, it's fine, just use a damp cloth.
Where you're going to spray everything down. I mean, I think hand sanitizer stations, which we have already uh, implemented about, I don't know, 10 days before, hand sanitizer stations at different spots around the venues. Um, and yeah, I totally agree. I mean, if you know, there are, you know, the public out there, if you watch people that don't wash their hands after going to the restroom, I think that's changed. You know, and I hate to say that it didn't happen beforehand, but if you could watch it, you know, and actually, I'm not saying that I was one of the watching it, but I have employees. It's like, oh my god, I just, and then watching people just use the bathroom and just walk out of the bathroom without, So I think that's changed. I mean, I think a lot of it's changed. I think people are going to be washing their hands for 20 seconds.
Well, I hate to think that it takes a pandemic to cause people to wash their hands, but no, but that's a reality. I mean, unfortunately, I live in the Northeast. I'm from the Boston area, Tom, and you know, when I was younger, I wasn't in the industry at the time. I was too young, but I clearly remember the station fire in Warwick, Rhode Island. And I know people that live in Rhode Island are ever mindful of that. Even people who weren't alive then are aware of it now because their restrictions on pyro are, I don't even want to say the word is severe because I think that they're realistic. I mean, it took lighting a small club on fire that was overstuffed for people to wake up and say, well, maybe we do need to regulate capacity, and maybe we should have fire certs on everything. And I don't mean to oversimplify, but that was kind of a light bulb moment for a lot of people. And unfortunately, we're in the midst of a global pandemic that now makes people think that cleanliness is something they need to take seriously. um, I hope more comes out of it than that. Shifting, Kyle, likes to focus on washing his hands because this is obviously something that he's been aware of and mindful of for a long time, and I certainly appreciate that. To your point, Tom, there are people who walk right out of the men's room after not washing their hands, and that's disgusting. Um, but is there anything else that you can point to or suggest? Is there anything you're hearing, from Live Nation as we understand, having recently been acquired by Live Nation? I'm sure there's a lot new regulations and things that you're dealing with that you weren't in years past. Are you hearing anything now about how projections are being made about other changes that are coming down the pipe?
I haven't. I think we're too early there. Um, I think there's going to be governmental regulations. I think that, I mean, I've spent Monday afternoon, looking at social distancing measures and looking at what my capacity would be if people were 6 feet apart. Um, so, uh, and you're just looking, what's the new normal? We don't know that, but I know that Knoxville and Knox County have, they've got uh, a new plan, or the reopening plan, which starts tomorrow. There's no more gatherings than 10 people. There, restaurants are reopening, but you have to have 6 feet in between patrons. I think I think you can have 4 people at a table, but then you have to have 6 feet between that. There's no, but the bars, you can't sit at the bar and have a drink. And then phase two is, no more than 50 people. Phase three is no more than 100 people in a mass gathering. Uh, you know, where we're going to go with that, I mean, it's going to be governmental. That this is what the new normal is, and so we're going to adapt to what that is. We have. I mean, I keep going back to you know the magnetometers and the no guns. I remember To me, when we started um, um, patting people down before we got wands was, and it's once again 4 or 5 years ago, and it's not the Pulse nightclub shooting. It was what happened the night before in Orlando, where the little girl that won or was second in The Voice or whatever was shot during a meet and greet. You know, um, so that's the one. It's like, and then when we started patting people down, I think the first show we had 5 guns turned away. So people were bringing guns in, you know, now they're not. And so, once again, the new normal will be the new normal. And I think that it'll be a combination of governmental regulations and what, how safe you can make your uh, audience feel. They, they're in line and they see that bags are being checked and that they're going to be, have to go through security, and you can watch the people that aren't hip to that, and they'll kind of step out of line for a minute, then they'll walk away. 5 minutes later, they come back and come back in. Well, you know, you know good and well that they took their gun back to their car.
Well, that's encouraging. That's good to know.
Yeah, yeah. So, and then there's people that have told us they'll never come back because they can't they have a permit, and I say, this is private property and you can't bring it in. So,
Wow. The things you have to consider.
yeah, and I mean, it's, it's a Southern thing. And, uh, I'm sure Texas is the same way. It's like, this is my right to carry a gun. I got that. It's your right to carry a gun. It's my right to not let you on my property
true.
when you have a gun.
So tell me something in your experience and having run some differing venues and been out in the field, like building shows from the ground up. What do you feel that in those times and such, and now, what can we do better overall as we, like in the venue side of it?
I think it's gotten so much better. And this is my opinion. I think I may have mentioned it in my bio that um, back in the old days, that when we'd go into a venue, um, especially municipal venues, um, it was almost like they didn't want you there. That, hey, now we got a show tonight. Now we got to work late. Uh, so, and now as I watched it over the years, it's like, oh, this is great. It's it was almost like that. Even though they were an economic driver for everybody, people were like, oh yeah, this is great. Downtown Knoxville, Christine, you haven't been there in I don't know how many years, but 22, 23 years ago, after 5 o'clock, there was nobody downtown. There was 2 restaurants on Gay Street, which is the main drag on, I bet there's 30 now. So, and a lot of that is driven by uh, the theaters. It's like, oh, if, the Bijou in Tennessee have a show on the same night, you, it's hard to find a table downtown where you can eat. So it's, I think that, and I don't know when it changed, but it definitely has changed over the years. I think, but when I first started running the Tennessee in 1996, what I knew about venue management was not a lot. It was, but I know not to do this. I know don't have don't have an adversarial relationship with the artist or the production manager or the tour manager. Uh, don't charge. I mean, this is one of my first. We were doing at a show, and I'm not going to name the venue, but they're charging the promoter $10 a table for the merch position. So there's like a $50 bill on that. And it's like, and the venue's keeping the merch. I said, you're charging me $50 to put these tables out here for a merch position, and I don't even get to keep any of the money. So, I mean, that, you know, I remember, another time and it was actually Bob Dylan and our buddy Al Santos, who's Dylan's longtime production manager. We're going to pull these seats out for the mix position. And, you know, you had to have a meeting of about 14 people. Finally, they said, okay, we'll do that. Well, yeah, it's extra work. Let's make it work. And then, a year later, they had removable seats there. So, it's just the thing. It was like, if you make the artist happy, they're going to come back. And then your venue's going to, it's a small industry. And it's like, oh, that's a great venue. I want to play there. Um, so to me, I think a lot of it has changed for the better. And I'm probably got blinders on right now about things that we can do better. Um, but I've definitely watched it go over the years. So it's like to be an adversarial relationship as a promoter, when you walk in the building, you're
That's
like,
awesome.
oh, we're
That's
so glad you're
wonderful.
here.
That's a positive. We like that.
I want to play there now. So if they're taking out seats, I want to play there now for front of house. I love it.
As it should be, right, Kyle? Well, and I think Tom makes a good point. It's, this is part of the part of our business that we have learned by mistakes along the way and getting better, over the years. And sometimes it takes parts of the country longer than other parts because, the bar is not as high perhaps, or the need is not there. But finding the ability to recognize that, hey, something like removable seats, what a concept. And now it's chop, chop, get it done. Good stuff.
So, Tom, I think I have the most important question yet. And I'm actually surprised that we haven't asked it already. This is a big one, so get ready. I trust you're going to have a great answer. What was Christine Dallas like to work with back in the
Well,
day?
my first question to you guys is, how do you get away with calling her Dallas? That's my first question, because I shared an office with her for 2.5 years, and she um, commanded proper respect, and she was the queen of the office. And so I don't understand the first thing everybody's calling her Dallas, and I was like, wow, how the hell do you get away with
Huh,
that?
turning that one around on me. I'll take a stab at that one and say I have absolute utmost respect for Dallas, but it never even crossed my mind I should ask her whether she was
Thank you.
okay
Thank you
with
very
how I
much.
referred to her. And I probably still won't. I'll just keep calling her Dallas. Dallas, I love you.
I will say that I didn't ask her; she told me, by the way. And I will say, yeah,
That's
they.
Christine Dallas, I know.
But I will
Yes,
say
exactly.
that uh, and somebody I worked with for 5 or 6 years, shared an office with for 2.5 years. I never had a rapport with anybody I've ever worked with before or since that, we had each other's back. Uh, it was a yin and a yang, and especially sharing the office, we kind of knew what each other was doing. And instead of asking what needed to be done, you could kind of just sense it and say, okay, I'm going to do that. And she had my back. I always think I had hers. Uh, but it was enjoyable. And also, you couldn't eat an orange in your office without peeling off some sections for her either. So,
Tom, have anything you want to add, like some wisdom to our listeners or some amazing story from back in the day you want to share with us?
not really. I just like I think I may have touched on it earlier, the hustle like you broke. I never really thought, much about it. But, when I first started with Ashley Cap started AC Entertainment, for the first 4 or 5 years, I had another job. I was working in a liquor store. I was tending bar. Um, and it actually probably started back in the Bandit days. It's like, I don't have a creative bone in my body. Uh, but watching this art come together and being a part of it, uh, was just fascinated. Maybe it's because I don't have, or any artistic talent and so I was like, wow, this is really cool. And I'm part of this now without having to sing, dance, play an instrument, whatever. So, you know, but it just all right, you got another job, you got to do this, worked in, you worked a 20-hour day, uh, you know, getting a show in a field and loading out the stage after loadout, but you still had a 10 o'clock shift the next morning. So you I don't care if you got in at 6 or not, you got to be at work at 10. So, uh, but and it allowed me, it's like, and then as I said it before, I never thought of it as really a career, but I'm 61 years
Here
old
you
and
are.
it's been a career. So yeah, and I know how hard you guys work on the road, and I know how hard the road is. And uh, I was also telling Christine, I'm really amazed, because of the lack of structure the last 6 weeks is, uh, I've not done that well with it, in my opinion. Um, I like the fact that in my job, I get up in the morning, eat breakfast, take a shower, you know, have a cup of coffee or tea, on the way out the door to work. And it's like, and I have deadlines and stuff. And now it's like, oh yeah, yeah, I can do this and I can do this. And and you guys, I know, a lot of work from home, a lot of advanced work before you go out on the road, and you do well with that. And that commands a lot of respect from me.
Well, thank you, Tom. Let's just have a couple more quick questions and then we'll wrap for today. We've actually passed a surprising amount of time already, and we definitely appreciate yours. We appreciate you being with us. Um, we usually ask people about their first tour or their favorite tour, but as a venue guy, can you tell us about your first or your favorite show?
The first, well, first of all, I don't know that Ashley Caps had this club in Knoxville, and I started bartending there, and there's just all this music I didn't know existed. Uh, and like, wow, wow, uh, that's amazing. I had no idea, from country and western to jazz to almost anything. And it's like, and I still, I know you guys probably don't know who he is, but JJ Cale, uh, working that show, and I knew kind of coming in how great an artist is. But for those of you that aren't familiar with JJ Cale, he wrote Leonard Skinner's "They Call Me the Breeze." He wrote Eric Clapton's "After Midnight." He wrote Eric Clapton's "Cocaine," and just being blown away. And that was one of those nights where it was two shows. So you know, we turned it around, did like a 7 and a 9:30 show, and I was just blown away. But one of the ones I do remember is being on the sitting at the monitor board the first time we did a Bob Dylan show, and being able to sit there, which by the way you could never do now. No way Dylan's crew would allow that to happen. But sitting at that board going, wow, this is absolutely incredible. And so I'm getting paid to sit here and watch this show on the side of the stage. It's like, wow, this is really cool.
Well, we all aspire to moments like that. So kudos to you, and kudos for such a long career. Again, we really appreciate you being here and sharing your perspective from a venue manager. And before we go, do you have any shout outs, thank yous, anyone you'd like to
Actually, right
call
now, just
attention to?
Christine, because I worked with her. It's been 20 years since I worked with Christine. And I do know that August 4th, if I don't make a phone call to her on her birthday, I'm dead meat. And, so, and I don't care if she's in Italy, Asia, Australia, she better, by God, have a voicemail from me saying that, uh, happy birthday. So, no, a lot of great times with her over the year, with her folks as well, vacation with her folks, and just working with her. I mean, you guys get to work with her, and so you know what, and but yeah, it brings back a lot of great memories and a lot of you know laughs. Over the years of kind of starting, you know, as a small promoter and making shows in fields and some of the things that the mud,
Cars running off
the
hills.
dirt, the dust, the personnel.
Sorry, I shouldn't
Yeah.
have.
Oh,
All right, we
ouch.
digress.
Ouch. All right.
Yeah, I
This
think it's
might be
over now.
yeah,
But it
this
does. It
might be
brings back
over
a lot of
now.
great
No.
memories, and it's true. It's what we do. We go out there, and yeah, it was like being on a team, and it's the greatest feeling ever. When we're all on the road and we're a part of a team and doing what we do, makes it all worthwhile, and why it keeps us, or for me, it keeps us going back out there.
And I do have. I'll shout out to both my staffs at both theaters. I've got a great team, and I've worked with a lot of great people over the years. And that's probably who my shout outs to be, because they put up with me uh, and my quirks and idiosyncrasies. But I always think that
As they
I'm
are
lucky
with
to
you.
work with them.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap up this love story in just a moment now before I feel a little queasy. I definitely appreciate it. I have made a note in my calendar. August 4th is Christine Dallas's birthday. I will try not to forget, Dallas. Forgive me if I do. I feel like we were on the road together for your birthday in the last couple of years, so I should know that already. Um, there it is. So, also, one more thing, Tom, that you alluded to, and I don't mean to end on a somber note, but we've heard from a lot of people, of course, about the difficulty they've had during what Kyle optimistically refers to as a coronacation that we are on these days. But certainly, mental health issues are a fact of life nowadays for a lot of us. And on our website, hustleikeyouBroke.com, we do have actually resources for mental health facilities and people in the industry who are calling attention to those issues right now. It is very important that we all prop each other up, take care of each other, and look out for each other, as clearly, Tom, you do with your staff and you and Dallas do with each other, which is very nice to see. So appreciate you very much for being with us today. Appreciate you being a hustler. We certainly will keep hustling. And
Thank you guys for having me. It was fun.
And good night.